Hi everyone, my name is Neil Huja, and in this video, I'm going to be covering how to come up with the perfect research idea to compete with in various research competitions, such as ISEF, JSHS, and Regeneron STS. The reason I'm making this video is that I know so many people are interested in doing high school research, but simply just do not know where to start, and this often discourages them from doing anything at all. I know this is definitely how I was feeling when I was getting into high school research 3 years ago, but after discovering this sort of reverse funnel process that I'm going to be describing in this video, I was able to come up with ideas and projects that helped me win at ISEF, JSHS, and other various research competitions. So without further ado, let's get into it. So first of all, if you're starting at square zero, I want you to think about one or two major disciplines that you are interested in. For example, this could be environmental science and biomedical engineering. Then for these scientific areas, break them down into 3 or 4 major subcategories, the ones that are most appealing to you. With the environmental science example, you could break it down into ecology, climate science, and plant science. With the biomedical engineering example, you can do biomechanics, biomedical devices, and biomaterials. You can find lots of information about categories and subcategories online, but I will leave the link to the ISIF categories and subcategories in the description below if you're having trouble finding more information. After you've identified the 3 or 4 major subcategories that you're interested in, you get to the hard part, identifying problems. This is where you really have to get a deep dive into scientific literature and popular articles. I'll make a whole separate video on how to dissect journal articles, but for now, I would just recommend that at first you look at some popular articles in New Scientist, Science News, and Scientific and American, or any other sort of popular journals that are a part of your specific field. These articles will be very easy to digest and give you a broad understanding of various problems that science is facing today and what different groups are doing to approach them. For each of your subcategories, try to identify at least 2 to 3 problems. For example, if you're looking into this subcategory of ecology, you can break it into overpopulation, endangered species, and biodiversity loss. I'd also recommend for this step to take a look at your local newspapers or TV channels, since these will often report problems facing your own community today. This can be useful later down the road, as having an origin story about the problem you choose to research that is personal to yourself. It makes it easier to stay motivated throughout the process, as well as it does provide an appealing story to tell to judges if it does come down to it. After you've identified the problems for all your categories, pick 2 to 3 problems that really stand out to you. For these ones, you really have to get into the scientific journal articles. These journal articles are written by researchers for other researchers, so they will have much more jargon and require a deeper level of understanding. This is kind of like a double-edged sword, as it will take you a long time to come to actually work through the scientific literature, but it will also give you a greater mastery of the field if you manage to do so. When looking for articles, I would start on Google Scholar and just search up keywords that interest you from the popular articles that you read. For example, if you're interested in biodiversity loss, look up on Google Scholar like just that, just biodiversity loss. With general keywords like this, the first results to pop up will often be literature reviews. These reviews summarize the current knowledge base of scientific literature in that specific field. And they are a pretty good place to start if you're looking for something more in depth than popular articles, but not as complex as research articles. So it sort of like eases you into it. So after you finish reading the literature reviews for your 2 to 3 problems, pick out the 1 to 2 problems across all your subcategories that again stand out to you the most. These should be the ones that intrigue you about the field and that you think you could have some contribution to. For these problems at this point, you have to do a very in-depth dive into literature. So find specific research studies published in journals that explore a very narrow part of the problem. Um, at first try, to read them all the way through, and I know that can be really difficult to do because of all the jargon that is involved. But it gives you a far greater understanding of the problem at hand that you will simply not be able to get without reading the journal articles. So, and then as you're reading through all these articles, always think about like what gaps are missing from the field that you could potentially fill through your research. And researchers will often note this in the introduction and discussion sections. So be sure to be on the lookout for that. Furthermore, while you're going through the literature, I would also recommend brainstorming alternative solutions that are similar to what researchers in literature are trying to explore, but are different to the point where you think you could have some sort of contribution different than what is existing. This is where like a lot of creativity is required and where a lot of kids get stuck in the scientific research process. But to give out some examples, if you're looking to see how different chemical compounds work at removing CO2 from the atmosphere, see if you can find a compound that is similar in properties and structure to what is currently known in literature, but hasn't actually been tested in any like known capacity. And so then experiment with that chemical that you find. Alternatively, if you're interested in improving maybe the efficiency of how planes fly, you can look at the standard wing structure that is currently used and then figure out ways to tweak it slightly. And or even like look at different types of engines and see how efficiently they can run a plane. So, conducting a research study does not necessarily need to be that you entirely reinvent the wheel, which would be impossible, right? You are simply building off what is currently existing by exploring small or large changes. And so, during this process, do not forget that it is good to think big, but keep in mind what you are realistically able to do given the time that you are able to spend and given the resources at your disposal. However, I'm by no means saying to get discouraged from doing crazy things. Crazy things are good. And even if they do not work, you will absolutely gain some good skills from the entire process. Believe me, I would know. Um, but I also really I really suggest being realistic about what you can do. Furthermore, during this entire process, it is absolutely crucial to be keeping track of what you know and really taking diligent notes throughout the entire process. Um, and to do this, I would recommend making a small glossary for yourself of keywords that often pop up in the literature that are essential for understanding the fields that you wish to pursue. Being able to easily refer to this will enormously speed up the process of trying to figure out an idea for your research. You might have also noticed so far that I've been making the assumption that you have the ability to work independently and have the ability to design your own research study. This is not always the case, such as if you work in a lab that has assigned to you a grad student that has their own research that they want you to do, or if you're in a field such as biomedical engineering or any other field that is very difficult to do independently as a high schooler. In such cases, I would highly recommend trying to design your own study. And once you've completed the planning, approach a lab PI, maybe at a local university in your area, to see if they would be willing to support your research. This might be a long process, but it is very useful to do. But again, this requires you having to design your own study and really come out with thoughtful, put together ideas. And that'll show them that you're very motivated and potentially make them more willing to support you. For example, I knew one girl who wanted to do research involving antibiotic resistance, which by ISEF guidelines requires a BSL-2 lab for. So she designed her own study and then approached a local lab to see if they would be willing to lend her some lab space to carry out her study. So a lot of researchers, in my experience, are open to high school research, but you really need to come prepared and be willing to put in the work to show that you're not really going to like come in for one summer and then just leave and not really provide anything to the lab. So I would also recommend that when you're brainstorming problems, to really think about impact metrics. The three easiest ones to understand are time, money saved, and lives saved. So when you're looking at existing solutions in literature, always think about ways that you could potentially improve upon one or more of these metrics. The more, the better. By doing this, you will undoubtedly come up with a project that can have a real impact on society and would have a very good appeal to judges as well. My last piece of advice would be to really let yourself think outside the box, which again is easier said than done. But try to keep track of try to keep control rather of as much of you can as of the project as you can. The best ideas that I've seen in science competitions come from when kids have these totally out of the box ideas and then they work independently to form their own solution. That everybody then thinks like, shoot, like I should have been the one to think of that. And again, I know that's easier said than done, but just try to keep this in mind as you go through the project, as you go through the process to figure out your own project. All right, so I hope everyone watching this video got something out of it and realized that coming up with a research topic for a high school research competition has no simple formula because everyone has varied interests and everyone is at different places along their research journey. However, by following the reverse funnel process that I have laid out in this video, you can drastically accelerate the time it takes to come up with an idea for an experiment that you can do as a high schooler. If you're looking for more inspiration on projects, I have linked the ISEF project board down below, which contains a little bit of information about all the different high school projects that people have competed with at ISEF this past year. I would highly also recommend looking through the winners because some of those projects are truly mind-blowing and make me think like,
holy cow, how on earth did some high schooler come up with this project and then carry it out? So again, look at that. It is very helpful. My last piece of advice would be, when coming up with your own project, don't just settle on the first idea that you find. Really try to dig deep for something that you truly care about and that you truly piques your interest. Because if it piques your interest, it will undoubtedly pique other people's interests as well. I would also recommend this because it will make it much easier to stay motivated throughout the process, and that sort of your love for the topic will really come across when you're talking to judges, and later down the road when you're truly trying to make a real impact on society. With that said, leave a comment down below if you want to see any other research videos, or are learning about anything else relating to high school research. And that you'll be interested in learning about. So be sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below. And I'll see you all next time. Bye.